So, you're a great speaker, but is your business actually working? Most professionals are blocked by their architecture, not their talent. Go to presentinfluence.com and take the strategic speaking business audit. It takes 2 minutes to identify the number one bottleneck stopping you from doubling your bookings, rebookings, and referrals. Find out if you're running a hobby or a business strategy and get your personalized roadmap. That's presentinfluence.com. Hello and welcome to Professional Speaking. I'm John Ball, and today's guest is one of the most watched TED speakers on the planet, Julian Treasure. Now, most speakers are obsessed over what to say and then wonder why the room drifts, the Q&A falls flat, and the talk feels like it's landing on a carpet. In this conversation, you'll learn why Julian believes the most important skill for any speaker isn't speaking at all, it's listening. You'll hear about how to read an audience's listening in real time, how to recover when the room's energy is off, and how to make your voice and message land with more impact. Julian's talks on speaking and listening have been viewed well into nine figures, and he's coached leaders and speakers worldwide. I'm fortunate enough personally to have known Julian for nearly 20 years, and happy to say finally managed to get him to come onto the podcast. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you so much, John. Good to be here. Good to see you again.
It's a real delight to connect with you once again. I would imagine that for our listener, there's a good chance they would have come across you, even if they may not have completely registered it. You are one of the most popular TED speakers that has been on the TED stage. I think it's the third most popular TED talk, something like that.
It's number 3 on YouTube. It's number 6 on TED.com. So yes, it's done amazingly well, that talk.
Yeah. And you've been on the TED stage a bunch of times as well. And you've got some really cool books out there, including How to Be Heard, which I got a lot of value out of reading myself. So I do appreciate that. And we've known each other for quite some while. I think the first time ever we sort of connected, I remember specifically you were talking about your business, the sound agency. And that has really always been your sort of area, like sound, and it's always stuck in my head for you talking about how disruptive the sounds of like streetworks were, and how we could actually have much nicer working environments. So a lot of what you say has definitely stayed with me over the years.
Yes, definitely. I mean, these days I've got 4 things that I speak about and work on, and they are powerful speaking, conscious listening, AI and human communication, which is a very interesting area as well. And finally, healthy and productive sound, especially in workspaces. So those are the 4 areas that I'm very active in. And I imagine the first and the second of those will concern us mostly today.
Yeah, we definitely want to get into some of that. One of the things I like to lead into things with is asking my guests about whether you have an opinion or a stance and relevant to what you do professionally that might be a bit different or even contrarian to what common wisdom or to what other people in the industry are generally saying. What is that? Do you have one? What would that be for you?
Yes, I think I would probably be unusual in saying that I think the most important skill for a speaker is listening. I think it's very difficult to be a powerful speaker on a stage or in an individual conversation or with a group of people if you're not a good listener. So to me, the kind of pyramid of communication, if you want to visualize it, the base is listening, the middle layer is speaking, and the pinnacle, of course, is presenting, professional speaking, oratory, as it used to be called once upon a time. And I think that's the pyramid shape is relevant because the base is the most important part, the listening.
Yeah. So I'd love to dive into that a little more, and talk about listening, and our listener might be thinking, well, am I supposed to be listening when I'm on stage? Or what are we talking about here? Like, what am I supposed to be listening to, and when am I supposed to be listening?
Well, first of all, listening to the people you're speaking to. I mean, there's a lot about listening and speaking, which, I don't know if you remember, I think I've told you this before, but my visualization of this is that there's a circle. Listening and speaking are not in a linear relationship. It's not I speak, you listen, straight line. It's a circle between the two, because the way I speak affects the way you listen, and the way you listen affects the way I speak, and vice versa, and round. It's kind of organic. Now, if you're a professional speaker, it's very important to understand that every human being's listening is unique. Now, most people don't understand this. Most people actually have an innate assumption that everybody listens like I do. It's all the same. And that's profoundly wrong. And if you work on that basis, you're effectively going around speaking to yourself the whole time. And it's not you out there. It's somebody very different who may have an entirely different listening to yours, because we listen through a set of filters. The filters are things like the culture we're born into, the language we learn to speak, the values, attitudes, and beliefs we accrete along the way from parents, teachers, role models, friends, whoever it might be. And then in any given situation, we may have intentions, we may have expectations, we may have assumptions, and we may have emotions going on as well. So listening changes from person to person, or group to group, audience to audience, and it changes over time as well. Now, you'll know that there's a slot just after lunch, which professional speakers tend to name the graveyard slot. And I get given that quite a lot.
Right.
Oh, he's a TED speaker, he can cope with that. And in the graveyard slot, the listening is very different to the listening at 9:30 in the morning, or indeed at 5:30 in the afternoon when they will want to go home. So the listening of an audience will change through the day, and it can change very dramatically and dynamically as well, which is one reason why I always like to be in the room quite a long time before I speak to hear the person before me, because they can have a dramatic effect on the listening I'm about to speak into. They might make the audience cry. They might make the audience laugh. Or, in some cases, I've had it that they've really pissed off the audience and created a bad feeling in the room. And I have to go on and deal with that somehow. So the listening is not uniform. And apart from anything else, you have to ask yourself, what are the audience doing there? I mean, what do they want? What's their problem? What's the journey I can take them on? So asking the question, what's the listening I'm speaking into, is fundamental. And that's something you can assess, even as you're on stage, by listening to the listening. So yes, you need to listen when you're on stage and speaking. You need to be conscious of the listening you're speaking into, how you're changing it, how it's morphing and changing, whatever's going on. So yes, listening is part of speaking to me.
Yeah. And I would say, I would maybe even for myself add to that. I think there's a lot we need to be more aware of and more present with when we're on stage and when we're speaking as well. So listening is definitely part of that, but something that sometimes is taking in some of the visual things that are going on in our environment as well, or tuning into the energy. It's like these are all, again, sort of ways of listening or checking in and getting some feedback from those environments. In relation to what you were just saying, it is fascinating to me. Yeah. One quick sidebar though, how do you go about winning over an audience when the speaker before you was just pissed them off? What did you do in that situation?
Well, it may be make a joke. It may be actually face the issue. I'm a great believer in dealing with elephants in rooms and being open about the process that we're all in, not pretending that there's something other going on, but maybe I was in the audience too for that talk. So maybe I come on and share what it meant for me without necessarily being incredibly rude or dismissive of the previous speaker, which is unprofessional. But, maybe just share, wow, I found that quite challenging. How are you? Whatever it might be, there may be a reason to do that. Or maybe you just come on and have to work very hard to do something that's dramatic and does a massive shift in people's attitude and state. So there are lots of ways of assessing that. It's important to be reactive and fast on your feet as a speaker. And by the way, all the things you just mentioned, like being around the room, being sensitive to the vibe and so forth, I put all that into the basket of listening. So that's, to me,
Right.
listening
Yeah.
is a multi-sensory activity. It's not simply with the ears.
So it's more listening in the sense of taking in the signals, audio and otherwise, around your environment and whatever else is coming up for you there. That is interesting for you, and it makes sense that you would put all of that in together. I would say as well, definitely it's good to know how we handle these situations, and I do think this is one of the reasons why speakers do need to be really well prepared and practice when they show up, because it's hard to be light on your feet in situations where you are just too busy focusing on what you're going to say and getting that right if you haven't really practiced it and polished it well enough. But I think also in those sorts of situations, it does actually show your audience that you're with them if you've actually been tuning into and experiencing something with them. So like when I've ever been on stage and I'm not the first person speaking, if I have the opportunity to see other speakers before me, I do find referencing that does actually engage the audience particularly as well, and sort of gives that sort of shared experience and shows you're paying attention. I think the people who are on before you appreciate it. You often, especially if you're calling back to something significant from what they said. So I think these are all things that can really pull the audience in more and say, all right, this is a level of attention we probably should be aiming for.
Sure. Yes. I mean, it goes around the other way as well. I've often, when I speak, sometimes there's somebody coming on after me who's not an experienced speaker at all. And I've just been speaking about brilliant speaking, hopefully well. So they'll often come on and say, oh my God, I'm coming on after that, and that is sharing their own uncertainty, and the audience immediately identify with them. That's a very good thing to do. If there is a challenge, then be open about it. And I mean, I'm not immune to these things, of course. We're all, I have been on after somebody who's, been brilliant and had the audience in stitches, and I'm not funny. I don't do gags on stage. So,
right.
There's a challenge there as well. So whatever it is that's come before you, acknowledge and, as you say, identify with the audience because you've seen it, you've had the same feelings. And that's a very good way of making a connection, an emotional connection with the people you're speaking to.
Yeah. So when we are listening to these signals in the room, particularly when we are talking to our audience as well, what would be your advice, or the way that you would then process and utilize that listening? How do you then put that into some sort of positive action so there's a greater benefit to it?
Well, of course, part of the listening is in advance. So it's thinking about the audience. And I'm always very careful to do that, to ask questions of my contact, whoever's booking me for a thing, about who the audience are, demographics, professional interest. Why are they there? What are they seeking to get out of this event at which I'm speaking? What problems do they have? What's their focus? What's the pain that they've got at the moment? And how can I contribute to solving that? And this is all about creating, I think, one of the most powerful visualizations, which I teach people when I'm coaching them, is all about the gift. So the visualization is, imagine a 6-year-old that if you don't, just imagine a 6-year-old, but most people will know a small child that's some way related to them, and it's their birthday, and you have got for them the best present ever, the thing that they really, really want, that is going to make them so happy. And you're standing in front of them with this present wrapped up, and this is the moment where you go, wow, look what I've got for you. That feeling of elation, of excitement, of generosity is what you need to be going on stage with, because you're about to give a gift. If the gift isn't what the people want, what are you doing there? So very much the prep for a talk is to think about, to make sure that the gift you're going to give is relevant, useful, exciting, is going to be of value to the audience that you're speaking to. And then, as you come on stage, that's the feeling. I've got this gift for you. It's great. And it'll make you excited and happy and up. And it'll make you connect with the audience. And most of all, it stops the whole thing being about you, because it isn't. It's never about you. It's about the gift. And that visualization, I think, is one of the most powerful any speaker can ever have.
And that's the specific visualization that you yourself use and with your coaching clients as well to get into that emotional state before going out on the stage.
Absolutely, yes.
Great. A valuable tool just there.
Yeah, you're happy, you're smiling, you're excited, as you should be, because you're about to do something great. And if you're not going to do something great, what are you doing there? It's your job to make sure that
why are you on the stage otherwise?
Exactly.
I love that. I think the emotional state side of speaking is missed by so many people who just think it's about purely about the words that you say and really not about the emotion, the energy, or whatever other elements you may bring to what is essentially a performance when you're on stage. Well, at least to a degree, not just that. Hopefully it's a bit more, but you are performing whilst you're on the stage. What are your thoughts on sort of like, I sometimes talk about energy leadership when people are on the stage. That's, as the speaker, you are leading the emotional journey for people in the room that you want to be pulling them across. Is that something that you would agree with, or do you have a different perspective?
Well, I think the journey is very important to identify in advance. You need to know where they're going to start from and where you're going to leave them at the end. Like, where are you taking them? It's like in a film, you have an arc, and each character has an arc.
Yeah.
It's very important that you understand that arc for the audience and where, what journey are you going to take them on? It may not be emotional. If you're talking about a university professor who's presenting a paper, I don't imagine there's much emotion in there, but that's about knowledge. It's about elucidation, enlightenment, whatever it may be. So whatever your objective is, it may be entertainment, it may be education, maybe inspiration, maybe a call to action, whatever it is, be clear about the journey. And I always say there are 3 intentions that are important to clarify before speaking. First, there's your intention for you. So what does success look like at the end of this? And that's something where I know, we share some NLP training back in the day. It's something which the kind of NLP technique of visualization can be very useful for. So you can really visualize, coming off stage, and what does that look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, even sound like? Really visualizing what that success is. So that's your journey. What's your intention at the end for you? The second intention is what's your intention for the audience, which is what we just talked about, the arc, the landing point. Where are you taking them from to, and what does that feel like for them? The third intention, of course, you have to guess, which is their intention for them. And if you can guess that reasonably accurately before you go on and align those things, then you're going to have a great time.
I love that. It's really, really useful way to structure it as well. When we chatted a little while ago, and we were talking very specifically about listening, and so we knew that this is what we were going to be coming here to talk about today primarily. One of the things that came up when we were chatting, which I'd love to touch on now, is because I often will say about how professional speaking, public speaking is as much a journey of personal growth as anything else. It's like it pushes you, often for most people anyway, pushes you in directions to grow, to develop, to become maybe more authentic, hopefully to expand yourself and become hopefully a better version of yourself too. Listening is undoubtedly a big part of that, but possibly doesn't get considered as much as some of the perhaps more obvious elements or the more things we've heard about more often. And you were talking about, I remember, the importance of listening beyond just as being on the stage, like how valuable it is for us in general. Could you speak a little more to that?
Yes, I think listening is a long forgotten skill. It's a skill, and most people don't even acknowledge that. It's interesting, isn't it, that we teach children how to read and write, not how to speak and listen. And yet for 3 million years or so, our species has developed and evolved with the almost, I'd say 99.7, I think, or 99.8%. I worked it out once. 99.8% of that time, we've communicated entirely by speaking and listening, or, more than 150,000 years ago by making noises and listening before we invented words. So sound has been our primary mode of communication for a huge, huge length of time. Writing was only invented 5,000 years ago. And yet it's taken over to the point where many young people today would prefer to send a text or an instant message compared to speaking to somebody face to face or even on a phone call. And they don't like making phone calls very much. There are now lots of research and lots of stories coming out of organizations where they're finding that young people resist making phone calls. They don't like making phone calls and actually having to talk to somebody and listen to them. So I think listening has been sidelined by our obsession with the eyes and with visual communication. And, to the point where we talk about video conferencing, many people would call this video conferencing. It's not though, John, it's not. It's audio conferencing with optional video, because if the pictures go off, we can carry on perfectly well. But if the sound goes down, what are we going to do? Smoke signals, hand signs, I don't know. So audio, sound and speaking and listening have been primal. And I think we've just, for some reason, turned our backs on them particularly in the last 50 years. And that's very sad, because the sound around us influences us. And, my books talk a lot about this, the 4 effects of sound, which influences us by changing our physiology, heart rate, breathing, hormones, secretions, brainwaves, all changed by the sound around us. Psychologically, our feelings, just think of music, of course. But it's not the only sound that changes our feelings. For example, birdsong makes many people feel secure and, happy. It's a very good sound to work to, by the way, birdsong, if you're looking for something to put on in headphones.
I actually remembered that from one of your talks from years ago. I used to tune into birdsong radio on the internet specifically because of something you'd said in one of your talks.
Yeah.
Very true.
Don't put music on, because music's it's high bandwidth as well. It takes a lot of cognitive load to listen to music. It's very difficult to do a lot when you've got music going on. Birdsong is brilliant because we can not notice it at all. We've evolved to it. And yet it's the sound of things being okay generally, and nature's alarm clock. Time to wake up when the birds are singing. So it's very productive. And then sound changes us behaviourally. It changes what we do as well. So there's lots of studies on this. Fast-paced sound speeds us up. Slow-paced sound slows us down, and so on and so on. It even changes what we choose to buy. And cognitively, sound changes how well we can concentrate. We all know that. Now, Julie, shut up, I'm trying to think here. It's very difficult. We don't have any earlids. So sound is changing us all the time, and becoming conscious of this is all part of becoming a more conscious, present human being to me, having a more conscious life. And, there's an awful lot of people now going around who are doom scrolling. I get very frustrated when I go to London walking on the pavements with incredible numbers of people are walking around looking at their hand instead of where they're going. That's quite difficult to navigate now. So getting lost in these
sometimes
devices,
walking into traffic as well.
Yes, even when there was yes, absolutely. So it is. I think it's a part of becoming more conscious and connected to the real world that's happening around us. Now, not everybody wants to do that, I suppose, but I do, and definitely what you said earlier is absolutely right to me. When I'm standing on a stage with a couple of thousand people looking at me, I'm very conscious. If you're not conscious at that moment, when are you going to be conscious? So it's a question of every gesture, every movement, every word being conscious, not involuntary, not unconscious, not distracting, not useless. Everything needs to be focused. And I'm having a lot of fun at the moment. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've had the honor of, or I have the honor of curating and presenting a session at TED in April.
Oh, wow.
Now, TED,
Great.
many people don't even know this. TED is actually a conference. So most of the things you see on TED.com come from the conference. It's 1,500 people in an amazing theatre in Vancouver. And there are 12 sessions in a week. Each session's about 90 minutes and each talk is about 10 minutes. So I'm curating about 9 wonderful talks in a session called Reasons to Listen, which I'm very excited about.
Mm.
And I can tell you the honing of these talks is a fascinating process, working with these people to get every word to be a diamond, which has got meaning and purpose and weight. It's non-trivial. It's a beautiful thing when you have somebody who's got a talk that's so gorgeously honed that, there's no wastage. All the fat's been cut away. It's now absolutely lean and magnificent, like we would love to be, John. So I think that process has really reminded me of the importance of losing the fillers, of being absolutely crystal clear in what you're trying to say and how you're going to say it. So yes, listening is part of consciousness, and consciousness is, I think, wonderful.
Yeah. I love that. And you said you weren't funny, Julian. No, well, I think you just proved yourself wrong. You might hear speakers say podcast guesting doesn't move the needle. Often they're right, but not because podcasting doesn't work, because they're doing it without strategy. Sending generic pitches, saying yes to any show, having nice conversations that don't build authority. That's noise, not positioning. If you want podcast guesting to build your reputation and generate real ROI, you need a system. My private audio masterclass, Strategic Podcast Guesting for Speakers, shows you exactly how to position yourself, sharpen your message, and pitch quality hosts properly. You can listen to the first 3 episodes for free and immediately fix your tech and positioning. If you like it, unlock the full 9-module system, including my pitch templates and toolkits, for the special launch price of just $95. Go to presentinfluence.com/podcast guest to get started. but let me ask you this, because I remember your company, the sound agency, you would like create soundscapes in businesses, and like understanding how important sound was for working environments as well. And I do take that into consideration in my own working environment to some degree. From the stage, in terms of, is there anything you think about in terms of how we're heard, not just listening, but how we are heard, how other people are listening to us, that we can be more aware about, things, I guess, like good mic sound, what we do in rooms that don't sound good, where the sound is not coming through well, what we can maybe do, what you would maybe focus on for improving how we are received when we are speaking.
Yes, that's all very important to think about. Of course, it's crucial to check all this stuff in advance. So any professional who's been around for a while will be very careful to check. You don't want to be turning up to a venue and go, "What do you mean you don't have a projector?" Because everything I do has got slides. Right. So, those kind of things can happen if you're not careful. So be careful. When you get there, if it's a big gig, say hello to the AV crew. Introduce yourself and be polite and get to know them, because they're going to make or break your performance. Specify the tech that you like to work with. For me, I prefer a handheld mic. Some people find that quite surprising because they like to gesticulate with both hands, in which case a headset mic is fine. And some places will really almost insist on it. I mean, TED would insist they have a bespoke, custom designed headset mic that's been finely engineered over the years. It's almost invisible on video, and yet it works very well. But I prefer a handheld because it's got a much bigger capsule, so it's a better sound than the tiny little capsule you have on those headsets. And also, I understand mic technique, so I know when to hold the mic close and when to move it further away, and how to work with one hand, even if I've got a clicker in the other hand. I'm perfectly happy closed hand gesticulating, if you see what I mean. It may limit me slightly, but it's just my style. Now, other people will be perfectly happy with something like a lavalier. I don't like them. And the reason I don't like them is because if you move your head, if you've got a lavalier, that's the little one that clips onto your clothes. If you've got a lav on your clothes and you move your head, you go off mic so quickly and so easily. Plus, they can rustle a lot. So think carefully about the tech.
Yeah.
Make sure you know what it is and what it can do. Understand the acoustics of a hall, definitely. I mean, I've done gigs where I get into a room and it's 100 people and I go, where's the mic? And I go, oh, we don't have any microphones. Is that all right? Well, it's going to have to be. So, part of being a great speaker and a good client relations person is that you don't stamp your foot and become a prima donna. Is it possible to get a mic? No? Okay, don't worry. I'll make it work. And then my reaction to that was move everybody out to the outsides of the room and speak in the round. I went into the middle of the room instead of on the stage and connected with everybody, which meant I had to rotate quite often, but it's quite nice. You're much closer to people, and it certainly helped my voice, not having to shout over 40 meters to the back of a room instead of being much closer to people.
And probably many of us wouldn't have figured that out, not having your sort of understanding of of acoustics and room technology as well. So yeah, definitely useful. Good. It's really valuable.
Sometimes in American hotels where you're in a ballroom, which has got flimsy partitions, and you can perfectly well hear the speaker in the next partition. And that's quite frustrating. You need to maybe acknowledge that, ask people to move into the center, whatever it may be, to give them the best experience. And sometimes you get a slap back echo off the back of the room if the acoustics are terrible. And again, I mean, there's not much you can do about that other than make a joke about being Elvis Presley or something. So being conscious of these things allows you to engage the audience, acknowledge the issue if there is one, help them to solve it, and be, not just ignore it and leave it in their court. So I think these things are very important.
Yeah. I don't know if this is an odd question or not, but it's just one I'm curious about. But the role of silence in listening, which seems paradoxical, I guess, but what role does silence play in our listening experience from your perspective?
Critical, absolutely critical. I mean, if you're really listening to somebody, you are being silent. Listening is an intensely humble experience, actually, which is why it gets harder, I think, as people get more senior in organizations. Many leaders are not good listeners because it's a kind of an ego thing. If you're listening to somebody, you're innately saying, you're more important than I am at this moment. And that's humble. Now, sometimes people's egos don't permit them to enjoy that very much. So they're eager to interrupt. They're doing what Stephen Covey talked about, listening to respond, instead of listening to understand or to empathize or whatever it may be. There's a great quote by Scott Peck. He said, you cannot truly listen to another person and do anything else at the same time. Well, that's true listening. And it's akin to meditation. You have to be very empty and trust that your mouth will know what to do when it comes to your turn, rather than preparing your next bit of monologue. So it's a very beautiful, meditative, calm, empty state. Now, we can't do that all the time. Of course we can't, which is why I talk about listening positions. There are different places to listen from, different ways to listen. And the key thing is it appropriate in this conversation? So, I might be making some food or something, and my wonderful partner Jane comes in and she's got a joke to tell me or something, and that's absolutely fine. I can be carrying on doing what I'm doing and paying a little bit of attention to it and have a light laugh. But if she came in and she was upset or she had something deep and meaningful to say, then it would be a case of, hold on a second, let me just finish this and I'll come and sit down and really listen to you. So, for example, with children, I always suggest that people who've got small children talk to them at eye level. Either you get down to them or you maybe sit down, put them on your knee, so you're eye to eye with the child, not towering over them from 4 feet above them, which is a little bit intimidating. And the best way to get children to listen, of course, is to listen to them. So the more you listen to somebody, the more you are saying, you're important, you mean something to me. And that's why it's a great thing to do as a leader, because you're actually validating people and they feel good about that. So listening leaders tend to create enormous loyalty and passionate engagement in the people that they're leading.
It's reminding me of a lovely book I read a while back, which I probably should revisit sometime soon. You may have come across it. It's by a lady called Nancy Klein, and it's called Time to Think. And it's really about this sort of being silent with people, giving them time to hold space for them and give them a question and be quiet, listen, and wait for them to speak and get stuff out there and don't interrupt. And there's amazing what can come up from those conversations, or from people just having the opportunity to know that someone is really listening to them. I agree that it's a very powerful thing that we can do for ourselves and others. And if we can entrain young minds to grow up with that skill, then all the more powerful and beneficial for a better future for people. That's really lovely. I want to ask you to come back to the TED speaking, because I know some people are going to be, some of my listeners might even be cross with me if I don't ask you more about the TED stage. But what for you has been the value or the benefit or even the joy of being involved with TED as a speaker?
Well, my history with TED goes back a long way. I think the first TED I attended was 2003, probably, in Monterey, long time ago. I knew Chris Anderson a bit we both have a background in computer magazine publishing in the UK. He founded Future Publishing and then sold it and bought TED from a guy called Richard Saul Wurman, who started it about 15 years before. So I've been going for a long time, and then I got the chance to do what was called a TED University talk back in probably 2007, I think was the first one, maybe 2009. I can't remember exactly. But they had the realization that the people in the audience are just as interesting, if not more so, than the people on the stage, which is true. It is quite daunting to speak at TED. You look out, you go, oh, there's Bill Gates. Oh, there's Jeff Bezos, And so the audience is not your average audience. And so they said, if anybody's got something that they think would be interesting to say, pitch it now and we'll give you a chance to do it on the TED stage. And that was TED University. And that was my first talk. And I got a chance to do 5 in a row. And the last one is the one that went completely ballistic. They didn't release it for a year, actually. And I thought they hadn't liked it. And then they released it, and it very quickly started doing amazing numbers. It's now, I don't know, 120 million or 130 million views across the internet in total, which is incredible and kind of inspiring as well, because it's lovely to know that I'm hopefully helping a lot of people to communicate better. But it was quite daunting doing that one. I mean, luckily it was the last of the 5. So I think by that stage I was practiced in standing on the red dot and doing the thing well. Because if you're going to stand in front of the TED audience and speak about speaking, that's putting your head above the parapet. I think you rather better do it well. Luckily.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. You did a great job. It's a very good TED talk. You did a presentation, and sometimes I think, did I remember? Is this real or did I dream this? You did I think an unusual presentation one time with John Ronson. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, I did. He did a fantastic.
It was like music involved in it.
Correct. Yeah, he wrote a great book called The Psychopath Test, and the talk we did, that was in Los Angeles, actually, that one. We collaborated with Chris Anderson. He wanted to do what he called enhanced storytelling. So the idea was John, who's a great storyteller, at the front of the stage, and then behind him, there were 2 baldies, me on one side doing the custom sound. It was all custom designed music and sound effects, which I was keying in sync with his talk. So it didn't matter if he changed the way he did it, I could change. I was just keying each sound as it was the right moment. And the other Baldy on the other side was my old friend Evan Grant, who's doing these incredible visuals that you can see. If you look at that TED talk, it's still online, the psychopath test. So I think it was a really lovely example of how to elevate storytelling with extra media. And in fact, I've got one of the talks in the session I'm going to be curating this year is going to be a little bit like that. It's the story of sound on Earth by a wonderful author called David Haskell. And it's going to have a lot of sound where we're going to use the incredible spatial sound system that's now in the TED Theatre, which can place sounds in 3 dimensions in the auditorium. Now, if you get to see that online, and by the way, you can take out a relatively low-cost subscription to watch the whole of TED online, or if you see it afterwards on TED.com, it'll be in 5.1 surround sound. So if you've got that at home, you'll be able to enjoy that. But I love this, the way of elevating simple words with sound, particularly, I think is very exciting. And we now have spatial sound. Many people have got Dolby Atmos at home or 5.1 surround sound. It's definitely the way things are moving in music as well as in film and gaming.
Yeah. I enjoyed it particularly because it was so unusual to see something like that and to hear it in that sort of way. And it made it very memorable. And yeah, something I do hope we see more of, because we should all be checking these things out as ways to be more memorable on stage and to create perhaps more immersive experiences for our audiences as well. Julian, I know you offer coaching as well. Is that more in relation to getting people on TED stages, or what is it people would come to you for coaching specifically?
Yes, both dimensions really. In speaking, it tends to be with somebody who's got something important coming up and wants to refine their content or delivery or both. So I've worked with TEDx speakers, I've worked with CEOs who simply want to be better at this skill, which is very important to them. It's amazing. I do talks to thousands of CEOs or hundreds of CEOs, and I say to them, how many of you use your voice in work? How many of you find it really important? And all of them put their hands up, because they talk to the media, they stand in front of rooms, they inspire their companies, they pitch for money, whatever it is. Okay, how many of you have had formal vocal training? About 3. What? If your voice matters and your outcomes depend on it, which is true for most of us, train it. So yes, I do coaching through Zoom quite a lot with people who need to speak well and powerfully. And also I coach people on listening skills. So leaders, as I said, particularly tend to find that quite challenging. So I do workshops, particularly with leadership teams. I do coaching. And the keynotes have moved in that direction as well. I think I tend to get booked more to speak about listening now, because many organizations are starting to focus on well-being and on engagement. And do you know the cost of disengagement is astronomical? There was a study last year which found that disengagement in America was costing trillions a year in terms of people making mistakes, people not being at work, absenteeism, illness, and all sorts of things, teams fragmenting. It's absolutely huge. Leaders need to listen, and most of them have never trained in it. So I think this is a big miss, and I think this is the year of listening to me.
So this is a topic that is potentially life-changing, even world-changing, that is a mission you're on, which is fab, and 100% behind you with it, Julian, as well. You have a community as well, which some of our listeners may be interested to check out. Can you say a little about that?
Yes, I started a thing called the Listening Society, and I'll give you a link to that. It's free to join, and I've put in there lots of resources that I've gathered over the years, like dozens of podcasts, for example, that I've done, as well as papers and trainings and all sorts of things, which are, I think, very valuable for anybody who's interested in listening, in speaking, or in the power of sound. So all those 3 things are in there. So by all means, come and join us in the Listening Society. There is a paid membership. It's not much. It's like £1 a day to access all my courses, including my full 7-hour course, How to Speak So That People Want to Listen, which is very similar to the book that you just mentioned, Johnny, How to Be Heard, but it's in more detail. It's got dozens of downloadable exercises, that course. So, take your pick, but come in for free and enjoy all the resources in the Listening Society.
You mentioned for me that you have an assessment that you would be happy to offer to our listener today. What is the assessment for? What would that give our listener to go and do that?
Yes, I've created, I think it's rather an exciting tool. It's got 4 assessments, actually, 2 on speaking and 2 on listening. There's an individual and a corporate or organizational in each of those 2 critical skills. So you can look at your individual listening, organizational listening, individual speaking, organizational speaking. And there's a set of questions for each of those. And then you get a score and you get some feedback immediately. And then if you want, you can go deeper with feedback from my very highly trained specialist GPT, Julian, which will give you bespoke and highly tailored feedback. And all you have to do to get that is enter your name and email address. And then off into the future, if you like, you'll get newsletters and things from me as well.
Well, I will make sure that there are links to everything we talked about in the show notes or video description for our listener to go and check all of those out. Julian, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. I can't believe it's taken so long for us to make this happen, but I'm glad we finally got to do that, and hope that maybe we'll be able to invite you back on again in the future as well.
Always a pleasure, John. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Well, that was Julian Treasure, and my biggest takeaway is this. Your audience doesn't just hear your words. They listen through filters, culture, mood, expectations, the speaker before you, the time of day, even the acoustics of the room. If you're not listening to their listening, you're basically delivering a monologue to yourself, which is fine if you're rehearsing, less fine if you're being paid. Now, I do think that some people are likely to take some solace in the fact that an experienced high-level speaker like Julian has some struggles with using humor in his talks and doesn't think he's particularly funny. Now, I think he's kind of wrong on that, and I would love to help him be a bit funny. I'm with Judy Carter that I believe that even if you're not funny, you can be funny on stage, and I think it's critical to do so. And you're going to hear one of my upcoming guests talking about just how important that is. His name's David Newman. He is amazing, absolutely blew my mind, and I can't wait to bring you that episode. It's coming soon, trust me. On Friday, I'm going to bring you something a little bit different, have a bit of a chat with you about whether now is the right time for you to start a podcast. Because we've talked about podcast guests before, but we haven't so much talked about podcasts. And there are certainly a lot of speakers, coaches, consultants who think, oh yeah, podcasts would be a good idea. And then sometimes find they've bitten off more than they can chew. So on Friday, we're going to dive into that a little bit more and see whether starting a podcast could be a high value activity for your business or whether it could just be a fun procrastination tool. Now, if you want to go deeper into any of the things we talked about today, I put links in the show notes to Julian's Listening Society and his speaking and listening assessments, including the tool with individual and organizational scorecards. If this episode has helped you, please do 2 things. Firstly, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next on Professional Speaking. Next, share this with a speaker or a leader who talks a lot but could listen a bit more. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Thanks for listening. I'm John Ball. See you next time.